First Eadeh Company, Red Devil Mesa, Rockland, 5th September 3059. They were a mop-up, a single company commanded by a man who'd seen better days in this dragon's army. That is, before he cracked up 2 years back. His people probably thought he was still nuts. At least that's what Chusa Evan Mathers assumed, since he'd piloted the company's sole mech, a gunslinger. There was nothing like being on the right side of a couple of Gauss rifles and pulse lasers to get people falling all over themselves to stay on your good side. So either his people cut him some slack or had a misplaced sense of civic duty. After all, nearly everyone had lost someone when Eadeh was vaporized. In that one horrible moment, Turtle Bay's citizens became kin, if you believe the talking heads on the evening news. Mathers, he had enough relatives. Thanks. Vector, BattleTech, 25 Years of Art and Fiction, page 145, by Ilse Bick. One of the easiest traps to fall into when learning history is to assume that the events that played out were inevitable. In reality, our place in the present was determined by an infinite number of choices which could have been easily different. Had a whim turned one direction or another, or deployed units shifted a few hundred meters in another direction, whole swaths of human history could be different. With the beginning of Operation Revival and widespread shock caused by the children of Kerensky, many of those seemingly inconsequential decisions began to pile up. While the clans would run head-on into the consequences of believing in their own inevitable victory, the great houses of the Inner Sphere were desperate for both information and any edge that could be found to dull the clan advance. Later, the relief that unexpected victories on Walcott and Twycross provided, as well as the betrayal of the clans by Wolf's Dragoons, offered a glimmer of hope at a perilous time. In another act that could have been quickly forgotten had it been unsuccessful, Tira Miraborg's sacrificial strike against the bridge of the clan flagship Direwolf bought much-needed time for the successor states as the clans recoiled to choose a new IlClan. With the reprieve, the houses had to work together. It must have been surprising for many within the bureaucratic machines of the Inner Sphere to see a level of cooperation that really couldn't exist before. A non-aggression pact between the Draconis Combine and Federated Sons freed up both military resources as well as industrial and commercial might. The factories of the Free Worlds League were running non-stop to produce goods sent into Lyran territory to help blunt the next advances. Even the wily and paranoid Capellans were eventually willing to cooperate for the cause. By September of 3051, each of the leaders of the Inner Sphere were looking at a completely remade political and military chessboard. Though the discovery of the Helm Memory Core, along with other rediscoveries of Star League technology, had drastically improved the power of Inner Sphere weaponry, it still paled in comparison to what the clans were able to bring to the battlefield. Increased cooperation between the great houses included tasking major corporations with state ties to work together to streamline production, part logistics, and share intellectual property for the benefit of the war effort. It was within this environment of unprecedented openness that decision-makers at Defiance Industries met up with their counterparts from Independence Weaponry. With clear directives from the Federated Commonwealth and Draconis Combine to create a battle mech that could go toe-to-toe with clan mechs at a long range, the mixed team of designers got to work. It's not uncommon for a battle mech to be designed around a specific weapons system. For the Gunslinger project, the design team knew from the start that this 85-ton mech would carry a pair of Gauss rifles, not just for the neat sound they make when fired, but because it was one of the few Inner Sphere weapons that could compete nearly on par with clan technology. With intel flooding in from planets across Lyran, Rosselhog, and Combine territory, a common theme in the reports was these invaders took advantage of range and eschewed physical combat. While other programs sought to take advantage of short-range brawling as an option, the Gunslinger was deliberately designed to slug it out at max range. It's unclear when the exact specs for the clan-grade Gauss rifle were known, as it was likely one of the many secrets ferreted away by the Lyran and Combine bureaucracies the second they were discovered. However, we now know that the 3-ton mass and 1 critical slot advantage of the clan design was the extent of the differences between it and the Inner Sphere design. It didn't take long for the intel folk to identify that clan Gauss rifles were firing at roughly the same distances and doing comparable damage. In the early 3050s, partial equality across weapon systems was as close to an advantage as could be had. To make dual Gauss rifles work, the Gunslinger had to be a massive machine. Aiming at 85 tons, the team settled on a pricey but necessary Vox 255 extra light fusion engine. While this only allowed the mech to move up to 54 km per hour, it was necessary to free up the mass for the mech's weaponry and other equipment. The 3-5 movement was augmented through the use of two massive Hildco Model 12 jump jets split between the legs. This allowed for short hops over troublesome terrain and to aid the gunslinger should it encounter elementals. But we'll get to those little buggers later. Beside the two primary weapons, another priority was maximizing the gunslinger's ability to absorb damage. This required the installation of 15.5 tons of Kevlar 5000 standard plate armor, which provided 248 points of protection. For comparison, the BLR Battlemaster 4S carried 13.5 tons of armor, and the Clan Warhawk carried 13.5 tons of ferrofibrous, which provided 259 points, which is just a little bit more than our gunslinger. The gunslinger's Nashan Quartet communication system was augmented by a Guardian ECM unit stashed into the mech's right torso. The Nashan Diana Mark II targeting system was bolstered by a Beagle active probe set into the center torso. The combination of both supplemental systems made the gunslinger difficult to track until it was ready to be tracked, yet still able to spot enemies that were themselves trying to take advantage of electronic countermeasures. Operation Sneaky Sneak is go. The previously mentioned twin Gauss rifles were the gunslinger's primary weaponry. The original Defiance version of the mech that first walked off the assembly lines on Hesperus 2 on December 5th of 3053 carried Poland-made Model A versions of the weapon. The gunslingers that were produced a few years later on Quentin by Independence Weaponry carried a different make, but both had identical specs. The Gauss rifles were split between the arms and fed from 5 tons of ammunition stored across the right and left torsos. That's 40 shots total for those of you like me who attended an American public school. The rest of the loadout was focused on dealing with the consequences of close combat, specifically with the Clan Elemental. The 4 standard B3M Defiance medium lasers split between the side torsos provided their reliable damage out to 9 hexes. They also presented a good distraction for critical hits that penetrate the mech but would have otherwise hit that XL engine or other more important parts like the ECM or Gauss rifle ammunition. Because it was a slow mover, the gunslinger was also given 2 Defiance P5M medium pulse lasers facing the rear firing arc. Interestingly, they were also set into the mech's legs, creating a novel opportunity to hit targets from a very low angle. Finally, in emotional support, Defiance A5L small laser was installed into the open head critical location for reasons. With 10 double heat sinks, heat generation wasn't an issue for the gunslinger. A front-facing Alpha Strike, including the small laser while on the run, only generated 17 heat. If the mech was being overrun and needed to fire those 2 rear-facing medium pulse lasers as well, that left the gunslinger at 5+ heat into the red, which would trigger that -1 movement modifier. However, if you fire everything, the next turn might not be a guarantee anyway, so go wild. You have my blessing. As previously mentioned, the first gunslingers didn't reach the finished lot at Defiance until December of 3053. This was too late to be of use during the initial clan invasion, as Comstar's machinations on Tukiad put a premature pause on the drive toward Terra. Still, both the Federated Commonwealth and Draconis Combine ramped up production of the gunslinger for what was seen as an eventual return to the fight. It turned out to be a wise decision, though predicting war in the inner sphere is a bit like predicting the sun will rise in the morning. When the Free Worlds League launched Operation Guerrero to snatch worlds from the Lyran Alliance, the gunslinger was put to work blunting their advance. It wasn't until the Jade Falcons renewed their invasion of the Lyran Alliance in 3058 did the gunslinger finally get to officially face down clan opponents. By available accounts, the mech performed its role admirably and gave at least as good as it got. The true test for the gunslinger was during Operation Bulldog, where the 2nd Star League sought to completely eliminate Clan Smoke Jaguar, not just from the Draconis Combine, but from the clan homeworlds as well. When the 7th Sword of Light landed 2 full lances of gunslingers on Pesht, it was done far ahead of the rest of the Sword of Light's advance. The Smoke Jaguars ended up caught between 2 masses of very determined Combine Mechwarriors, who sent dozens of Gauss rifle rounds into their ranks from multiple directions. More than a dozen clan mechs fell to this withering fire. The fact that only 2 of the 8 gunslingers survived the maneuver is hardly the point. Let's not worry about that and just move on. As the mech warriors of the Defiance Self-Protection Force scattered toward their battle mechs, Gory headed for his GUN-1 ERD gunslinger. The mech was a product of a joint Davion-Kurita design team intended to cripple clan mechs at the standoff rages the genetically engineered clan warriors seemed to favor. The gunslinger mounted a pair of Gauss rifles, 1 in each forearm. A half-dozen medium lasers, 2 of them pulse models, completed the assault armament. Gory was as familiar with the mech and its capabilities as he had been with his ex-wife, but unlike her, the big machine had never let him down. The Dying Time, page 146 and 147, by Thomas S. Gressman. The original Gunslingers could be found most often among the Draconis Combine units, former Fedcom units, Lyrans and Fed Sons, as well as friendly mercenary units such as the Northwind Highlanders. Outside of that garden, the valued battle mech was much rarer. The first official variant for the Gunslinger arrived in 3062 and was designated the GUN-2 ERD. It looked a lot like the original, but with some tweaks in performance. For example, a third jump jet was added to the center torso to boost the movement profile to 353. Armor allocation remained unchanged, as well as the 10 double heat sinks. The 2 Gauss rifles from the original version were left in place along with their 5 tons of ammunition, so don't worry. Another change involved the 4 medium lasers, which were all yanked in favor of 4 ER medium lasers split between the side torsos and all facing the front firing arc. The Guardian ECM was retained in the right torso, however the Beagle active probe from the 1 ERD was swapped out for a C3 master computer set into the left torso. After all, it's a mech variant from the 3060s, so it has to have a C3, right? There's a lot to like about the 2 ERD Gunslinger, especially if you aren't crazy about those rear-facing medium pulse lasers on the 1 ERD. Front-facing damage output is strong and heat management is easy, with a full Alpha Strike on the run only resulting in 4+ into the red. Even if you're not running a C3 computer unit, the Gunslinger 2 ERD is a strong contender for the mech in its ideal form. The first wave of irregular battle mechs arrived in a way that both startled and awed Alice Getz. All were jump capable, and the whole group of them rose simultaneously from their concealed positions, kicking up a wave of dust as they cleared the debris and closed on her position. An 85-ton gunslinger slammed into the ground with such force that her tank quaked with its landing. Nearby, a dull gray wyvern came down too, its knees flexing hard under the impact of its jump. The mechs fanned out as they landed in front of her company, who stared at them in sheer respect and amazement. In the distance, many more battle mechs were coming, rumbling through the mounds of debris. Call of Duty, page 127, by Blaine Lee Pardoe. Our next gunslinger was a one-of variant of the GUN-1 ERD, owned by a Lyran lieutenant named Jared Killian. If it weren't for a series of strange events, Killian would have likely had a rather routine career as a low-level officer. An early example included a transfer to the elite 15th Lyran Guards, which normally wouldn't have occurred due to his lack of experience and the fact that the Fedcom civil war was raging. The posting ended up being fortuitous for the young Killian as he quickly met a beautiful civilian named Sandra after arriving. The two quickly grew close and the relationship developed. In fact, once Sandra discovered that she was pregnant, Killian learned that his love was actually the daughter of Lieutenant General Gina Chiampa, the CO of the entire 5th Lyran Guards. This must have caused him a sleepless night or two, wondering if he would incur the wrath of his CO once she found out about the pregnancy. Killian's luck continued to hold out when it turned out that the general was not furious, but actually appeared to be quite supportive, at least on the surface. Killian was quickly transferred to the general's personal command company and given a gunslinger that was undergoing a complete overhaul. While the core of the mech was left untouched except for 3 additional double heat sinks, the most significant changes were found in the mech's weapon loadout. The 2 flagship Gauss rifles were removed from the arms in favor of 2 long-range Missile 15 launchers and 4 Streak SRM-4 launchers. The LRM-15s were fed from 3 tons of ammunition and set into the right and left torso, and each of the Streak SRM-4s had their own dedicated ton of ammunition stored in the arms along with the launchers. Now you might be thinking, Mechfrog, you roguish purveyor of BattleTech nonsense, that's a lot of ammunition in the arms and side torsos. What's going on here? Well, you'd be quite observant because the gunslinger refit was a trap for our friend Lieutenant Killian. As it turned out, General Chiampa was not as supportive as she had appeared. She was displeased by her daughter's choice of a man and thought that she could do better with a man of better social rank. These are the Lyrans we're talking about here after all. The general intended for Killian to march off into war and conveniently not return. This gunslinger was powerful but vulnerable due to the plentiful ammunition stocks that couldn't possibly be drained fast enough in the next fight. Sending Killian into the heaviest frontline fighting would surely result in a noble battlefield death that no one would question. The plan seemed foolproof, but once again Killian's strange luck held out. Even though he was in the thick of some of the heaviest fighting that the 15th saw on Hesperus, and his battle mech suffered repeated near-deadly amounts of damage, not once did his ammunition get critically hit. The expected rapid ammunition detonation did not occur, and through battle after battle, Killian earned his mother-in-law's respect. It also likely didn't hurt that they named the baby Gina. The Gunslinger Jared is a powerful battle mech that leans really hard on the opportunity cost chart toward offensive power. However, as we all know, opportunity cost spares no one, and unless you have Lieutenant Killian's luck, sooner or later some of that ammunition is going to cook off. It's a battle mech for the bold, and luck favors the bold, right? The Gunslinger's pilot was an incarnation of brutality, an avatar of carnage, of fury. There would be no surrender, no mercy, no hope. The assault machine came down on Christina Morton just as she reached the river's edge. How the hell was he doing that? 2 perfect death from above attacks in a row? And then the monster turned toward him, and Pensk nearly passed out. Isle of the Blessed, Book 2, page 12, by Stephen Mohan, Jr. It wouldn't be until 3078 when the Gunslinger saw another visit from the Variant Ferry. This sub-variant of the 2 ERD once again carried that third jump jet, the 2 Gauss rifles, and 4 ER medium lasers split between the side torsos. Additionally, the head-mounted emotional support laser made its return in the ER small laser variety. Finally, a C3 boosted master computer was added to the left torso at the cost of the Beagle Active Probe and traditional ECM. For those of you who are fuzzy on it, the C3 boosted master system was developed by the Fed Sons in 3073 as a way to prevent any interference from standard-grade electronic jamming devices like the ECM. It's a pricey addition to any battle mech as it weighs in at 6 tons and takes up 6 critical locations. Unlike the 2 ERD, the 2 ERDR is unlikely to justify itself unless you're running a C3 network. However, if you do, go for it. "I've got ants," Quintos snarled. "Purifiers. West side of Corian, moving south to north." And then he stomped down on his jump jets, and twin spires of argent fire pushed the massive Gunslinger into the air. And that's when Quiros let his instincts take over. He pulled his feet off the pedals almost immediately, turning his jump into a short 15-meter hop. Not very far, but far enough. He came down right where he wanted to, on top of an armored soldier with a full force of 85 tons of assault mech, suddenly abandoned to the whim of gravity. Quiros barely felt a bump as the unfortunate Wabi absorbed the impact, smashing him flat. Isle of the Blessed, Book 2, page 6, by Stephen Mohan, Jr. In the chaos of the Word of Blake kerfuffle, including the occupation of Hesperus II and widespread obliteration of trade networks, it's not a surprise that production of the Gunslinger faltered. It wasn't until the Blakeists were obliterated and the positions of the great houses stabilized that it was possible to take another look at the Gunslinger. Our most recent variant on the timeline didn't arrive until 3131. The industrial might of Defiance allowed for this updated design, designated the GUN-3 ERD, to take advantage of a variety of advanced features. Independence weaponry was also involved, though production on their lines within the Combine required more nuanced trades for parts, either salvaged from former Novacat battlemechs or buying them from salvage houses in the Rushhog Dominion. Ultimately, the most reliable, if expensive option was buying directly from Clan Seafox. But what specifically were they buying, you might ask? Well, let's get into it. The Gunslinger 3 ERD's biggest expense was the swap over to a Clan Spec 255XL engine. This dropped the number of critical locations on the side torsos to 2 instead of 3, improving the battlemech's survivability. This will be a running theme, as the other major change in the design was the swap over to 20.5 tons of inner sphere-grade ballistic reinforced armor. The 246 points of protection from incoming fire were especially effective against ballistic weapons such as missiles, autocannons, and Gauss rifles. Exactly the sort of weapons the Gunslinger was designed to counter with its own long-range shots. The movement profile for the 3 ERD dropped back down to 352, which was convenient because the extra light gyro added to the mech filled the 2 open critical locations in the center torso. See, nature finds a way. The traditional 2 standard Gauss rifles were once again split between the arms. However, this time they were bolstered by Case 2, which prevented the unintended Gauss capacitor discharge from doing any more than destroying the weapon. Each rifle was fed by 2 tons of ammunition stored in their respective side torsos. Starting at mid-range, 4 clan spec ER medium lasers split between the side torsos provided some of the best damage per ton in heat in the galaxy. Finally, 3 small X-pulse lasers were added to the Gunslinger, 2 split between the legs and facing the rear firing arc, and 1 emotional support laser in the head facing forward. The Gunslinger 3 ERD stands as a very powerful and tough foe in its spot late in the timeline. The combination of clan technology and ballistic reinforced armor has created a much more survivable machine than any of its previous iterations. Immediately after looking at the 3 ERD, I knew what I wanted to do with my totally unofficial and non-canon Gunslinger 3 ERMF. Since the official variant opened the door to clan technology, I just went ahead and busted through that door like the Kool-Aid Man carrying hyper-assault Gauss rifles. The 3 ERMF is structurally the same as the 3 ERD, with the same movement profile, 10 double heat sinks, XL gyro, and Clan XL engine. It even carries the same 20.5 tons of ballistic reinforced armor. Easy so far, right? The change arrives in the form of the nearly unforgivable removal of the twin Gauss rifles. Now, before you get out your pitchforks and torches, I did replace them with a pair of Clan Hyper Assault Gauss Rifle 20s split between the arms and shielded with Case 2. Each rifle is fed by 3 tons of ammunition stored in the side torsos. The 20 damage is spread out in a scatter, but I foresee this variant as one that could be paired with 3 ERDs and other battle mechs that could hammer a target for that pinpoint damage. Starting at 18 hexes, the right torso-mounted inner sphere grade LB-10X autocannon can add its fire either in solid or cluster round form thanks to its 2 tons of ammunition stored in the right arm along with that Case 2. To further lean into the toughness of the mech, the inner sphere grade laser anti-missile system was installed into the left torso, so now missiles will be even less effective against it. Finally, because we have 1 critical hit location and a half ton of mass remaining, the inner sphere ER small laser in the head can help fend off infantry or pesky door-to-door gutter salesmen who are quote-unquote already in the neighborhood doing some work. Yeah, right, get zapped. I wanted to put this Gunslinger to the test, so I loaded up Megamech and cobbled together a lance of mixed MFs and standard 3 ERDs versus a collection of clan mechs of roughly comparable power. Going to war in a dried lakebed map, the 4 Gunslingers moseyed out onto the field. Very quickly, the Timberwolf lurched ahead, apparently seeking to take advantage of its speed to quickly close on the Gunslingers. The Gunslingers took offense to this and quickly fell into a gunline and focused their fire. The Clan Marauder 2C also got in on the fun, and soon the Gauss rifle rounds and ERPPC shots were flying. As the closest target, the Timberwolf took a majority of the incoming fire. Gauss rifle rounds here and there peeled away armor, but luck was not on the Mechwarrior's side, as one of the rounds flew right through the Timberwolf's cockpit, decapitating the mech. From that point on, order began to break down as both the Marauder 2C and Kodiak closed, while the Direwolf lumbered forward trying to hit where it could. Another few rounds passed as the clan mechs focused their fire on the northernmost Gunslinger and ripped it apart. The ballistics armor didn't make that easy, and the mech lived longer than it should have under normal conditions. All the awesomeness in the world wasn't enough to save the Marauder 2C, which fell shortly after the first Gunslinger. That left a 3 versus 2 with the Kodiak and Direwolf ready to slug it out in close range. Rather than staying grouped together, the Gunslingers started to back up and fan out, seeking out good angles for hitting the 2 clan assault mechs. The damage continued to pile up on the Kodiak, and finally an already damaged cockpit took an ER medium laser hit, and the Mechwarrior was rendered into burnt carbon. This fight is getting brutal. Over the next 5 or 6 rounds, the relatively unscathed Direwolf picked apart the damaged Gunslingers one by one until the fight boiled down to just 1v1. The Direwolf didn't have a lot of armor left after taking more than its share of Gauss rounds in solid chunk and flechette variety. The remaining Gunslinger was one of the MF variants, which was a slight issue as it took several additional turns to crit seek into the Direwolf to finally bring it down. Though credit for the destruction of the Direwolf's leg actually went to the ER small laser. Good for you, little buddy. The LB-10X's solid shots ended up being very useful to strip away what little armor there was left. Overall, the fight was quite close, with the Gunslingers barely taking the day. If the dice rolls had gone a little bit more in the clan Mech's favor, I think they would have taken the field. The Timberwolf died a turn or two too early due to the headshot, and the Kodiak had at least one more turn in it as well. The final appraisal is that the Gunslinger 3 ERMF handled itself well, though it does rely upon friends to crack armor panels. This is pretty on par for mechs built around hyper-assault Gauss rifles. If you'd like to give it a go, I've included a free PDF record sheet for it and a link in the video notes below. So why do we love the Gunslinger? For fans of the Gauss rifle, this might be an easy question. For those who enjoy battle mechs created following the clan invasion, well, it's still pretty easy. For the fans of standoff long-range weaponry, yeah, I can see it. For me, the Gunslinger is one of those underrated gems of the original 3055 technical readout. It was a battle mech designed to defeat the clan invasion that wasn't ready for most of it. It was a machine that could dominate a battlefield, but struggled to be produced unless there was peace and cooperation between great powers. The Gunslinger is a mech that demonstrates well the tumultuous and drama-filled inner sphere in the years following the clan invasion. I think that's pretty cool. Though I'm curious to hear what you think. Is the Gunslinger a mech that makes your lists regularly, or did you just learn about it for the first time today? Perhaps you fall somewhere in between those extremes. Let me know what you think down in the video comments below. With that, I'll say thank you for sticking around this long and listening to me blather. It's so much fun digging through this lore every week and compiling what is just really a fancy book report. Another big thanks to the MechFrog Discord server community that always has such well-painted models to share for the upcoming week's topic. If you'd like to join, I'll go ahead and add the server link to the video notes below. Come hang out, it's mostly painless. Mostly. If you thought the video was worthwhile, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so it lets YouTube know that it's a video worth sharing with others. That way you're much more likely to see my nonsense in the future. If you want to go one step further, supporting the channel through Ko-fi or becoming a YouTube member helps keep the nonsense flowing. To all those who already have, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means so much to me that you've placed your trust in me to keep improving as a content creator. With that, I'll say have a great week. Please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.